Okay, in this video what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at how we can use buttons to create a timestamp for starting and for stopping, and then working out how long it's taken between the start and the stop button being pressed. We're also going to look at how we can enable and disable buttons as well. So there's lots to do in this video here. So if we look at the GUI itself, we've got 4 buttons initially to start off with. And what I've also done is I've put in labels, although you cannot see them inside here at the moment. However, when I press the start buttons, then those labels will appear. So if we just have a look there, first of all, at the GUI itself. So I've gone down and I've created the frame here. What I've got is there's going to be 3 variables that I'm going to be working off. I'm going to be working off a start time, an end time, and a time taken. Now the difference between these variables is I'm linking these variables to a label rather than to an entry box, which I'll show you in a couple of seconds there now. So obviously we've got the title, which is stopwatch. We've got the geometry, which is 600 by 600, and then we were going to be taking 3 variables that we're going to be working with throughout. So if we look at row 1, so what I've got is I've got a start button here, and obviously you can see that the text is start test 1, which you can see there, and there's a command called start, and I've placed it into row 1, column 0. Now, then what I've done is I've created a label. Now, the difference here is that I haven't put any text into the label. However, I have linked a variable to that label, and I've called it start time, and as you can see there, that's a string var. And what I've done is I've put it into row 1, column 1, and the reason why you cannot see it is because there's nothing in it at the moment, because that variable start time is it hasn't been given a value yet. Similarly, I've gone for a stop button, which you can see there, and that's linked to the function called stop. It's been placed into row 2, column 1, and also I've got a label inside there. And again, I haven't put any text into the label. I've put a text variable into the label, and I've called that end time. Okay, and then I've put that into row 2, column 1, which you can see here, but it's blank. Okay, then what I've done is I've just taken, there's another label called time taken, okay, and there's another label which you cannot see here, but because I've connected it to a variable called time taken, I've put them both into row 3, column 0, and column 1. So again, you can see the row 3, column 0, but again, there's nothing at the moment into column 1. However, when we start it, we will begin to fill up values inside there. Last 2 things that I've got there is I've got 2 more buttons. I haven't kind of really done anything with them. I've got the start test 1, and the probably thing for me there is that I've configured it to a state called disabled, so that when I try to click on start test 1, because I've configured it to a state to disabled, then I can't click on it, which might be good and which is something you might be able to use in the future. Again, it's done the same with stop test 2. It's disabled, you can't click on it, it's not going to do anything for it. The last one then is a reset button, so if I want to make any changes, I can click on reset, and then I can reset everything to the way it started at the start. So let me just show you how it works. So when I click on start test 1, you can see that I get a timestamp for when I clicked it. So it's 16 minutes past 9, which you can see it's 16 minutes past 9, and we've also included the seconds, which is important here. What I've then done is when I click on stop test, yeah, you can see there it's still 16 minutes past 9, but what's changed is the seconds. So what I simply do is I strip out the seconds, okay, and then I subtract the 2 of them from each other to get the time it took to do that. When I click on reset, everything goes back to where it was. Now you can also see as well that when I click on stop test, yeah, not only will it calculate the time taken, but it'll now also allow me to it'll enable the start test 2 and stop test 2 as well. So let's go through the functionality of those buttons. So let's start with when I click on start test 1. So when I click on start test 1, the command is start. So all I simply do in this one is I'm going to take a timestamp of when I clicked that button. So first thing that you've got to do is you've got to import date time from date time, import date time, and you can also import time as well. So if we look at it here, so the function for start is, so literally what I do is I create a variable called start time to display. Okay, and then I use this this function time, which is from the time class there, dot strft time, and then I can put it into hours, minutes, and then seconds. And then all I simply do is I do start time dot set and display that time. Now remember that start time is the string var that I set up, and it's the string var that I associate, it's that variable that I associated with that label. Okay. Now, when I click on stop, okay, stop does the exact same thing. So what I do is I create an end time to display, and I get it from the time class, okay, and I can put it into hours, minutes, and seconds. And what I do then do is I put that into the variable that's going to display that in the label. Okay, so now what I also want to do when I click on stop, not only do I want to display that timestamp or when I stopped, I also want to work out, well, how many seconds did it take me to do that? So the first thing that I do is the following. Okay, so what I do is I get the start time, okay, yeah, and remember I'm referring to the string var variable. I also get the end time, okay, and what I do then is I split the start time and the end time into its hours, its minutes, and its seconds. Okay, so it's realistically it's the seconds that I want to focus on. But here's what I do. So I can create 3 variables, okay, and then what I can do is I can map them as integers, yeah, and how I map them as integers, I basically split it, and I split that A by the colons. So whatever's in the first position, which is H, will go into starting SH. Whatever's in the minutes will go into SM, and whatever's in the seconds will go into SS. Okay. Now, all I simply then do is I just do a bit of casting. Okay. Okay. Now, technically, I don't really need to do any casting because it's going to split it into those integers anyway. But I'm just going to put it into casting. So now I've got my starting hours, my start minutes, and then my start seconds. So start hours will contain 09, start minutes will contain 017, and start seconds will contain 05. I do the exact same thing. So I get whatever's in the variable for the end time, and then I split it into its 3 individual parts. And then I cast them as integers, so end hours will be 09, end minutes will be 017, and end seconds will be 07. Okay, now all I simply do is I've got to work out the difference between the seconds. So first things first. Okay, so what I do simply is the following. So if the end seconds is greater than the start seconds, so for example, if the start seconds was 58 and it took 3 seconds, then the end seconds will be 02. So I can't subtract them because I'll get an incorrect answer. So all I simply do is I take, so if this one here, if this seconds is less than this one, yeah, all I simply do is I add 60 onto the end time, yeah? So so for that example, if that was 58 and if this was 02, yeah, I'm not going to subtract, I'm just going to add 60 onto 02 to make it 62, subtract it from the 59 and I'll get the 3 seconds. Okay, so all I simply do is I add 60 onto the end seconds, and then I subtract the end seconds from the start seconds, and I get the time taken. Okay, and then all I simply do is the variable time taken, yeah, okay, is associated with the label. Yeah, you can see this down here, the label here. So all I simply do then is I set time taken to the string value, because that's going to be an calculated time taken as an integer at the moment because you've subtracted it to them. So I just cast that to a string. What I then do is I set the stop button to normal for test 2, the start button for test 2 to normal, and I disable those the start test 1 and start and stop test 1 buttons. Okay, so yeah, so essentially that is it. The reset button, basically, when I click on reset, it puts the start button 1 to normal, stop button 1 to normal, stop button 2 goes back to disabled, stop button 2 goes to disabled, and then I just set all of the 3 variables back to blank, which obviously means that you can't see anything there.